What happens when a country music star who rebuilt his life after addiction in prison sits across from a talk show host who believes she knows better than everyone else? What follows is one of the most heated confrontations ever seen on daytime television. Jelly Roll, the tattooed musician with a heart of gold, arrived on The View expecting a routine interview about his music and his journey from the streets to stardom. Instead, he found himself face to face with Joy Behar, who began tearing him down on live TV. This wasn't just a celebrity interview gone wrong. It was an example of how one person's arrogance can push someone too far. Before this story unfolds, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. You'll have plenty to say once you see what happens next. The studio lights were blazing hot that Tuesday morning as Jelly Roll adjusted his black button-down shirt and settled into the iconic chair. The audience buzzed with excitement. Many longtime fans had followed his transformation from a troubled past to chart-topping success. Whoopi Goldberg wrapped the opening segment, and the atmosphere felt positive, almost electric. Jelly Roll, whose real name is Jason DeFord, had been looking forward to this appearance for weeks. It was a chance to talk about his album, his work in criminal justice reform, and maybe inspire others battling their own demons. "Our next guest has had quite the journey," Whoopi said warmly. "From time behind bars to topping the country charts. Please welcome Jelly Roll." Applause filled the studio as he waved, his genuine smile winning over the room. His authenticity was unmistakable. "Thank you so much for having me," he said in his deep Southern voice. "I've watched this show for years, so this is surreal for me." Sarah Haynes opened with easy questions about his collaborations, music, and upcoming tour. Jelly Roll responded with humility and gratitude, describing how music saved his life, how his daughter pushed him to change, and how he hopes to help others who are struggling. "A lot of people look at someone like me and write me off before they know my story. The tattoos, the past, all of it. But we all have the capacity to change and become better." The audience hung on every word. This was the Jelly Roll they loved. Honest, vulnerable, and open about his mistakes and growth. Alyssa Farah Griffin asked about his work helping former inmates reintegrate into society. His passion grew as he described supporting programs that give people a second chance. "I've been where they are. It feels like society has given up on you, like you'll never be more than your worst mistake. But people can change. They just need someone to believe in them." That's when Joy Behar, who had been sitting quietly with a smirk, decided to step in. Viewers knew the look. She was ready to stir up drama. "Well, that's all very nice and inspirational," she said, her tone condescending. "But you broke the law for years. You were involved with drugs. You were in and out of prison. Now you're talking about second chances like you're some expert on rehabilitation." The studio fell silent. The energy shifted instantly. Jelly Roll's smile faded, but he stayed composed, clearly trying to remain calm. "I think my experience gives me a unique perspective," he answered. "I'm not claiming to be an expert on anything except my own journey. If sharing my story helps even one person avoid my mistakes, then it's worth it." But Joy continued. She leaned back with a pleased expression, as if she believed she was making a sharp point. "Isn't it convenient that now, when you're famous and making money, you're suddenly this reformed character? How do we know this isn't just good PR?" His hands, once resting calmly in his lap, tightened into fists for a brief moment before he deliberately forced them to relax. The other hosts shifted uneasily, clearly surprised by how quickly the tone had turned hostile. "Joy," he said, a warning edge in his voice that anyone familiar with him would notice. "I think you're misunderstanding what this is about. This isn't PR. This is my life. These aren't talking points. They're real experiences that shaped who I am." But Joy wasn't finished. There was a sharp intensity in her eyes, like she sensed vulnerability and wanted to push further. "I'm just saying," she continued, "it's easy to preach about redemption when you have a record deal and sold-out shows. What about the people you hurt? What about the communities damaged by the drug trade you took part in?" The accusations settled heavily over the room. Jelly Roll's shift was immediate. No longer just composed and patient, but deeply affected. His breath changed. His posture stiffened. A fire flashed in his eyes. A sign that Joy had crossed a boundary. "You want to talk about the people I hurt?" he said, his voice rising. "Then let's talk about them. Let's talk about how every day since I got clean, I've worked to make amends, to do better, and to help others however I can." Joy pushed forward, unfazed or unaware of how far she had gone. "I'm just saying it's easy to preach about redemption when you have a record deal and sold-out shows. What about the people you hurt? What about the communities damaged by the drug trade you took part in? That was the breaking point. The composure he'd been fighting to maintain cracked under the weight of her relentless criticism. After years spent learning self-control and working to improve his life, he was suddenly confronted by someone determined to tear down the progress he had made. The reaction was sudden and explosive. Jelly Roll stood up so quickly that his chair rolled back behind him. His 6-foot frame loomed over the desk as his voice boomed across the studio, startling everyone around him. "Are you kidding me right now?" he shouted, his southern accent thickening with emotion. "You think I don't carry that weight every single day? You think I don't remember every mistake, every person I hurt? You have no idea what you're talking about." The audience gasped. Cameras scrambled to frame the moment. Producers panicked behind the scenes, unsure whether to cut to commercial. Whoopi looked stunned. Sarah covered her mouth. Alyssa froze in shock. But Joy, unbelievably, seemed satisfied, as though she had achieved exactly the reaction she wanted. "There it is," she said smugly, motioning toward him. "There's the Real. You. Still the same angry criminal, just better dressed." The silence that followed was even heavier than before. Jelly Roll stood there breathing hard, his expression a mixture of fury, disbelief, and something deeper, something dangerous. When he spoke again, his voice was low, controlled, and far more chilling than when he was shouting. "You want to see the real me?" he growled, leaning forward with both hands pressed onto the desk. "The real me spent 3 years in county jail thinking about every person I hurt, every family I damaged, every life destroyed because of my choices." He didn't pause. "The real me has nightmares about kids who overdosed on drugs I sold. The real me goes to funerals for friends who never got the chance I did." Joy attempted to cut him off, but his voice sliced through her interruption, firm and unstoppable. "No, you pushed this, so we're having this conversation. You sit up there in your ivory tower and judge people like me. But what have you ever sacrificed? What have you ever had to overcome? You think redemption is a publicity stunt because you've never needed redemption yourself." The camera lingered on Joy's face, and for the first time since the exchange began, she looked genuinely uncomfortable. Her smug expression began to falter as she realized she may have pushed too far. "I'm just asking the tough questions that need to be asked," she insisted, though her voice had lost the confidence it held moments earlier. "Someone has to hold people accountable." "Accountable?" Jelly Roll let out a laugh, cold and humorless. "You think you are holding me accountable? I hold myself accountable every single day. I work with organizations that help addicts get clean. I go into prisons to talk to kids who are making the same mistakes I made. I donate to families who lost loved ones to overdoses. What are you doing besides sitting here and tearing people down?" Whoopi stepped in attempting to regain control, but Jelly Roll's focus never left Joy. "You know the difference between you and me," he continued. "I admit when I'm wrong. I own my mistakes. You sit here acting like you're morally superior to everyone else, but you're just a bully with a microphone." Joy's face flushed, not with embarrassment but anger. "How dare you call me a bully? I'm a journalist. I'm asking legitimate questions about..." "About what?" He cut her off, his volume rising again. "About how people with a past should never be allowed to change. How anyone who's made mistakes should crawl into a hole and never come out. You're not asking questions. You're pushing an agenda. One that's about making people feel small so you can feel big." The hosts glanced between the two of them like spectators caught in the middle of a match, unsure whether to intervene or let the clash play out. The audience was silent, captivated. "I've interviewed thousands of people," Joy argued, her voice growing defensive. "I can tell the difference between real rehabilitation and convenient storytelling. And what I see here is someone who learned the right words to make people forget what they really are." The comment hit him hard. His expression shifted. Hurt, anger, and finally something like pity. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, but even more powerful. "What I really am," he said slowly, "is a father who wants his daughter to be proud of him. What I really am is someone who knows what rock bottom looks like and wakes up every day climbing out of it. What I really am is a human being who made terrible choices and is spending the rest of his life trying to make them right." He paused long enough for the meaning to settle before continuing. "But what you are, Joy, is someone who gets paid to tear people down. Someone who thinks being cruel is the same as being clever. Someone who's never had to fight for anything real in your life. So, you have no idea what real change looks like." Joy opened her mouth to argue again, but he raised a hand, stopping her. "I'm not finished. You want accountability? Let's talk about yours. How many people have you discouraged from seeking help because you make them believe they'll never be forgiven? How many second chances have you destroyed with your cynicism? How many families have stayed broken because you convinced them that people never really change? The questions landed directly, and her expression showed it. The confidence she'd worn earlier had crumbled. Now she looked like someone realizing she'd chosen the wrong person to attack. You think you're so sharp, Jelly Roll continued, his anger now tempered with disappointment. You think you're exposing a fraud, but all you're doing is revealing who you are. Someone who tears others down because you've never built anything yourself. Sarah Haynes attempted to ease the tension, but neither of them acknowledged her. This wasn't a segment anymore. It was a clash of two completely different beliefs about people and redemption. I stand by everything I've said, Joy managed, though her voice trembled. People have a right to be skeptical of convenient transformations. Jelly Roll slowly shook his head. His eyes held a kind of sadness. Now, you know what's really tragic, he said. You could have used this moment to have a real conversation about addiction, about criminal justice reform, about helping people rebuild their lives. Instead, you chose to be cruel for no reason other than your own entertainment. The weight of his words settled over the entire studio like a heavy blanket. For a moment, even Joy seemed to reflect on what he'd said, but her defenses snapped back into place. She straightened in her chair, renewed defiance taking over. Don't lecture me about entertainment. This is journalism. This is asking the tough questions everyone else is afraid to ask. If you can't handle scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't put yourself in the public eye. Jelly Roll let out a bitter, cold laugh. Tough questions. That's what you call this. Then let me ask you some tough questions. When was the last time you admitted you were wrong? When was the last time you showed real compassion to someone who made mistakes? When did you last use your platform to help someone instead of tearing them down? Joy's mouth opened, but no words followed. She hadn't expected the spotlight to turn on her, and the conversation had slipped completely out of her control. That's what I thought, Jelly. Roll continued, his voice building again. You can dish it out, but you can't take it. You attack other people's character all day long, but the second someone questions yours, suddenly it's unfair. Whoopi tried to step in again. Okay, I think we need to. No, Jelly Roll said firmly, turning to her. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this needs to be said. He faced Joy once more. I came here in good faith to talk about music, redemption, and maybe inspire a few people. Instead, I walked into an ambush by someone who decided before I sat down that I was a fraud. His voice lowered, becoming even more intense. You know what the saddest part is? You had a chance to be part of something positive today. You could have asked about the programs I support, the kids I mentor, the real work being done to help people change their lives. He shook his head. Instead, you chose to be a bully. I am not a bully, Joyce snapped. For what? Jelly Roll exploded, any remaining calm completely gone. For getting clean? For turning my life around? For trying to help others avoid my mistakes? What exactly am I being held accountable for, besides having a past that makes you uncomfortable? The tension in the studio was electric. Audience members stared wide-eyed, some with hands over their mouths. Behind the cameras, producers scrambled, unsure whether this was a disaster or the best TV they'd ever captured. You're being held accountable for profiting off a redemption narrative while real people still suffer because of what you did, Joyce shot back, her voice finally steady again. Profiting? Jelly Roll's voice cracked with emotion. You think I'm profiting? Every dollar I make, every chance I get, I carry the weight of knowing I have to earn it every day. You think I don't know there are families who lost someone to drugs I sold? You think I sleep easy because I have a record deal now? He leaned in, face inches from hers, voice raw. I give away more money than most people make in a year to help addicts. I spend my free time in prisons talking to kids who remind me of myself. I use every platform I have to tell people they can change if they're willing to do the work. Joy tried to interrupt, but he spoke right over her. But you don't want to hear that because it doesn't fit your narrative. You already decided who I am, and no amount of proof will change your mind. Proof? Joyce scoffed. A few donations and prison visits. That's supposed to erase everything you did. The question struck the room like lightning. Jelly Roll stood up straighter, his expression changing. Something sharper, deeper took over his eyes. Not anger anymore. Something deeper and more profound filled his expression. No, he said quietly. Nothing can erase what I did. Nothing can bring back the people who died because of the choices I made. Nothing can undo the families I damaged or the communities I hurt. And I live with that every single day. His voice grew stronger, not with rage, but with something rooted much deeper. What you're really asking is whether I deserve forgiveness, whether I deserve redemption, whether someone like me should be allowed to move forward and try to make amends. He looked around the studio at the hosts, the audience, even the cameras. My answer is this. I don't know if I deserve it. That's not for me to decide. But I'm going to spend every day of the rest of my life trying to earn it. Joyce started to respond, but he raised his hand again. You want to judge me? Fine. Judge me by what I do from this moment on. Judge me by the lives I helped save, by the kids I helped turn away from the road I took, by the families I helped rebuild. Don't judge me by who I was. Judge me by who I'm becoming. The silence that followed was overwhelming. Even Joy looked stunned, and for a fleeting moment, there was a flicker of what might have been shame in her expression. You came at me today believing you'd expose a fraud. But all you've exposed is your inability to believe people can change, your cynicism, your need to tear others down to feel superior. He straightened his shirt and turned to the camera. To anyone watching who's struggling with addiction, who thinks their mistakes define them, who's been told by people like her that they'll never be more than their worst moment, you can change. It won't be easy and it won't be fast, but you can. Don't ever let someone tell you otherwise. Joy made one last attempt. I think you're being overly dramatic. Jelly Roll cut in immediately. You attacked my character, my motives, my redemption, my right to speak on my own experience. You tried to tear me down on national television for your entertainment. And when I defend myself, when I show what accountability actually looks like, you call me dramatic. He shook his head. You know what, Joy? You're the kind of person who makes it harder for people to seek help, who keeps families divided and communities broken. You are the problem, not me. Then he turned to Whoopi. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry this is how it went. But I won't apologize for standing up to someone who approached me with nothing but malice and prejudice. The camera caught Joy again. Her expression changed, realizing she'd crossed a line she shouldn't have. Wait, she called out as he started walking away. He didn't turn around. We're done here, he said, final and firm. I came to talk about redemption and hope, and you turned it into an attack. That's on you, not me. He walked off the set. The audience sat in stunned silence. The other hosts looked shocked, processing everything that had unfolded, and Joy remained at the desk, looking smaller than she had at the start, like someone who just learned how powerful words can be and how dangerous it is to push someone too far. What began as a standard interview had become something far more significant, a clash between two opposing beliefs about human nature, forgiveness, and redemption. And in that studio, it was clear who had come out on.